The saloon doors slammed open like a thunderclap, and every head inside turned. The piano stopped mid-tune. Even the drunk asleep in the corner stirred at the sound. Outside, the rain hammered the dusty street of Calico Ridge, but it was the man who walked through those swinging doors that froze the room. His name was Eli Cade, an outlaw with a bounty high enough to make even his own kin whisper about turning him in. The wanted posters said he shot sheriffs, robbed trains, and carved his mark into the wood of every bar he ever drank in. Folks said he had a taste for whiskey so strong that if you cut him open, his veins would bleed rye instead of blood. Tonight, though, there was something strange about him. His boots dragged more than they stomped, and his eyes had that hollow gleam of a man carrying a ghost on each shoulder. The barkeep, a broad fellow with a gut as round as his oak casks, hesitated before speaking. "What'll it be, Cade? We don't want no trouble." His voice carried the tremor of a man who knew trouble had already walked through the door. Eli dropped a silver coin on the counter, its ring sharp as a bullet casing. He leaned heavy on one elbow, staring at the row of dusty bottles stacked behind the bar. His lips curved into something halfway between a grin and a grimace. "Whiskey," he said, his voice low and hoarse from too many nights running, too many days without sleep. The barkeep swallowed hard, reached for the bottle and poured a measure into a chipped glass. But Cade didn't touch it. He just sat there, watching the amber liquid catch the lamplight. The silence stretched until the men at the card table shifted in their chairs, their boots scraping against the floorboards. Then the outlaw spoke again, softer this time. "Not tonight." He pushed the glass back. "Bring me something else." The barkeep blinked. "What do you mean, something else?" Cade's eyes, dark and sunken, lifted slow to meet his. "Water." The word dropped like a stone into a still pond. A nervous laugh rolled across the saloon. Somebody whispered, "The hell kind of outlaw asks for water?" But the barkeep did as he was told. He filled a tin cup from the jug and set it down with a rattle. Cade lifted it with both hands like it weighed more than lead and took a long, ragged swallow. That's when the front doors creaked again. A gust of cold wind blew in, carrying more than rain. 3 men stepped inside, dripping wet, revolvers heavy at their sides. They wore dust-stained dusters and wide-brimmed hats pulled low, but everyone recognized them. Sheriff Ryland Pike and his 2 deputies. The law had finally caught up. The room held its breath. Cade lowered the tin cup, water still running down his beard. His fingers tapped the counter, slow as a funeral drum. The sheriff's voice carried steady across the room. "Eli Cade, you know why we're here." The outlaw smiled, a sharp, tired thing. "Ain't no secret, Sheriff." He gestured toward the untouched whiskey glass, then the tin cup of water. "Strange night, huh? Man drinks water instead of fire, and suddenly it's his last." Deputy Harlan shifted nervously, his hand twitching near his holster. But the sheriff didn't move. His eyes stayed fixed on Cade. "Stand up," Pike ordered. "Hands where we can see 'em." Cade didn't rise. Instead, he swirled the last mouthful of water in the tin cup and downed it slow. His Adam's apple bobbed as if he were savoring something rare, something purer than all the whiskey in the West. When the cup hit the bar again, the sound rang louder than any gunshot. "You boys ever think about it?" Cade said, his voice cutting through the silence. "How a man lives his whole life burning his throat with whiskey, and when death comes knocking..." He lifted the empty cup, shaking the last drop onto the floorboard. "It's water that wets his lips." The room stayed still, like even the walls leaned closer to hear. The piano player shifted on his stool, hands trembling over silent keys. The sheriff's patience snapped. "Enough talk. Stand up, Cade." The outlaw finally rose. He stood tall, his shadow stretching long in the lamplight, a dark figure against the rain-streaked window. His boots creaked, spurs jangling soft like warning bells. One hand rested near his belt, the other curled loose at his side. "You're right, Sheriff," he said. "It's enough talk." The air grew thick. Somewhere outside, thunder rolled. The smell of wet dust and gun oil mingled heavy in the saloon. Every man knew what was coming, though none wanted to be witness. Eli Cade tipped his hat back just enough for his scarred face to show clear. His eyes burned with something fierce, something final. "So let's see who drinks last tonight, me or you." And as the sheriff's hand twitched toward his revolver, the outlaw's grin widened. The storm outside broke with lightning, just as gun hands twitched inside. The storm outside cracked open the night sky just as the first shot rang out. For a heartbeat, no one knew whose gun had spoken. The flash of lightning swallowed the muzzle flare, and smoke filled the saloon before anyone could breathe. Men dove under tables, women screamed, and the piano player bolted through the back door, his stool clattering to the floor. The bartender ducked behind the counter, clutching his belly like the bullets might find him even there. When the smoke cleared enough to see, Sheriff Ryland Pike stood steady, revolver drawn, his jaw set like stone. Across from him, Eli Cade was still on his feet, hat knocked askew, gun in hand but untouched by lead. A hole smoked in the floorboards between them. "You missed," Cade said, his voice calm as church bells in a graveyard. The sheriff's eyes narrowed. "Wasn't aiming to." Another gun cracked. This time it wasn't the sheriff or Cade, it was Deputy Harlan. His bullet slammed into the mirror behind the bar, showering glass across the room. His hands shook like a boy's. "Damn it, Harlan," Pike barked. "Hold your fire!" But Cade had already moved. His hand blurred, faster than fear itself, and his revolver bucked once. The other deputy, Jonas, stumbled back, clutching his chest, blood seeping between his fingers. He hit the wall and slid down, his last breath rattling like dry beans in a sack. The saloon went dead quiet, except for the rain outside and the ragged breaths of men who'd just seen death pick a face. "Two left," Cade said, lowering his gun only slightly. His grin cut sharp through the smoke. "Sheriff Pike, you sure you want to finish this?" The sheriff's face didn't flinch, but his voice carried iron. "You're not walking out of here, Cade. Not this time." Cade chuckled, a sound rough as gravel. "Funny thing about walking out, Sheriff. Sometimes a man don't care if he leaves standing or carried." Harlan twitched again, fumbling at his holster. Cade's revolver turned on him like a snake. But then, from the far side of the room, another voice cut through. "Put it down, Cade." It wasn't the sheriff. It was a man who hadn't moved since Cade first walked in, sitting alone in the corner booth, shadow hiding half his face. He rose now, slow and deliberate, a rifle resting easy in his hands. His coat dripped rainwater onto the floor, his boots scuffed from long travel. The lamplight finally caught his eyes, gray, cold, unreadable. Cade's smile faltered. "Didn't figure you'd show." The sheriff blinked, glancing between them. "You know this man?" Cade's jaw tightened. He never looked away from the newcomer. "More than I wish I did." The stranger stepped forward, rifle never wavering. "You've run long enough, Eli. Tonight it ends." The room held its breath a second time. The sheriff lowered his gun an inch, trying to piece together what the hell was unfolding. Harlan froze, too scared to breathe. Cade finally barked a laugh, bitter and broken. "Hell, if it ain't Caleb Vance. Thought the desert buried you years ago." A murmur rippled through the saloon. Folks remembered that name. Vance, the bounty hunter who vanished chasing Cade across the Jornada del Muerto. Some said Cade left him for buzzards. Some said the outlaw had slit his throat and let the coyotes gnaw his bones. Yet here he stood, alive, rifle steady, eyes full of old debt. "Truth is," Vance said, voice low but clear, "you should have killed me proper, but you didn't, and now I'll see your last drink finished." The words landed heavy. Cade's fingers twitched near his revolver, but his grin didn't return. "You talk like you know what that drink means," Cade said. "I do," Vance replied. "And it ain't whiskey." The sheriff stepped in, voice sharp. "What in God's name are you two talking about?" Neither man answered. Cade finally lifted his revolver, but instead of aiming at the sheriff or the deputies, he spun it around and set it on the bar, barrel pointing away. The gesture shocked everyone. "You want me, Vance?" Cade said. "Then it's you and me, but not with these folks caught in the fire." Vance's rifle never lowered. His jaw flexed as if grinding down years of anger into one last act. "Outside," he said. "In the rain, where it started." Cade nodded once. He grabbed the tin cup, still wet from water, and tipped it to his lips, empty. He set it down with a thud. "Then let's finish it." The sheriff tried to protest, but neither man listened. The crowd parted as Cade and Vance walked toward the door, boots heavy, spurs clinking like the ticking of a clock running out. The storm welcomed them with open arms, rain drenching their shoulders, thunder rolling across the dark hills. Inside, Pike holstered his gun, face grim. To Harlan he muttered, "This ain't our fight no more." Out on the street, two men faced each other through the curtain of rain. One an outlaw who'd cheated death too many times, the other a ghost come back to claim his due. The outlaw's last drink wasn't whiskey, but before the night was over, it would be blood. The rain came down like bullets from heaven, each drop stinging skin, soaking hats, and turning Calico Ridge's dirt street into black mud. Thunder rolled overhead, not once, but in waves, as if the sky itself wanted to witness the showdown. Eli Cade and Caleb Vance stood 15 paces apart, boots sinking into the mire. The outlaw and the bounty hunter, both framed by the yellow glow spilling from the saloon doors, looked less like men and more like shadows pulled from the storm. Inside, townsfolk crowded against the windows, breath fogging the glass as they strained to see. The sheriff remained on the porch, arms crossed, rain dripping from the brim of his hat. He didn't intervene. Not this time. Whatever this was, it had started long before Calico Ridge, and it wouldn't end with his badge in the way. Cade's hand hovered near his holster. His hat was drenched, plastered dark against his forehead, but his eyes burned steady. "You always did like dramatics, Vance," he called over the rain. "Dragging me out in a storm like this." Vance's rifle gleamed wet, barrel pointed low but ready. His coat clung heavy, water coursing off the fabric in rivulets. "Wasn't me who chose the storm, Cade. That's your doing. Every place you've touched turned to thunder." The outlaw chuckled, bitter as old tobacco. "Still the preacher with a gun. Thought near death would have beaten that out of you." "Near death," Vance echoed. "You left me for the buzzards, sand in my throat, blood in the dirt, circling vultures. And the only thing that kept me breathing was spite." Lightning cracked so close, it lit both men in stark silhouette. Cade's scarred face twisted into a half-smile, Vance's hardened jaw grim with purpose. "You should have stayed dead," Cade said softly. "And let you keep carving graves from here to Santa Fe?" Vance's voice sharpened, cutting through the storm. "No, Eli. Tonight you answer for every man you left bleeding, every town you burned hollow. Tonight you drink last." The street stilled, as if even the rain held back. Cade's grin faded. His hand closed around the worn grip of his revolver. The moment stretched thin as a noose rope. Then thunder clapped, and both men moved. Cade's revolver cleared leather in a blink, barrel flaring once, twice. Vance dove sideways into the mud, his rifle barking thunder, the shot tearing past Cade's shoulder and splintering a hitching post. Windows shattered as lead screamed through the night. Horses screamed, hooves clattering against fences as they panicked from the noise. Cade advanced, firing blind into the sheets of rain. Each shot echoed like judgment. Vance rolled to his knees, rifle braced against the muck, and fired. The round caught Cade's arm, spinning him sideways, blood blooming dark across his sleeve. But the outlaw didn't fall. He snarled, teeth bared, and raised his revolver again. His shot blasted a lantern from the saloon porch, plunging the street into near darkness save for the lightning. Shadows lunged and twisted, storm and fire mixing into chaos. "Still breathing, Cade?" Vance shouted, voice hoarse. "Still standing," Cade spat back, clutching his arm. Rain ran crimson down his fingers. The townsfolk pressed harder against the glass. Some prayed, others cursed. None dared step outside. Sheriff Pike stayed rooted, one hand near his holster but unmoving, eyes locked on the duel. Another crack of thunder, another volley. Cade's revolver barked dry, empty. He cursed and ducked behind a trough, fumbling cartridges into the cylinder with trembling, blood-slick hands. Vance strode forward, slow but certain, rifle steady despite the storm. He chambered another round, mud splattering his boots. "Out of whiskey, out of bullets," he called. "Seems you've nothing left, Cade." Cade slammed the revolver shut, teeth clenched, and rose with a roar. He fired. The shot went wide, tearing through the rain and into nothing. Vance answered. His rifle kicked, the bullet smashing into Cade's side. The outlaw staggered, hand clutching at his ribs, crimson spreading fast. But Cade laughed, harsh, ragged, defiant. "You think that'll stop me?" He lurched forward, revolver raised though his strength faltered. His boots dragged trenches in the mud as he forced himself closer, closer still, until only a dozen feet separated them. Vance's jaw clenched. "Stay down, Eli. Don't make me put you in the ground." Cade's smile twisted, blood on his teeth. That's the only place I belong. He lifted the revolver one last time. Lightning split the sky, and thunder drowned the sound of his shot. The gun bucked, but whether it hit or missed, none could tell in the blinding flash. When the light faded, both men stood frozen in the rain, silhouettes locked in eternity. One swayed, one steadied. Then, slowly, a figure collapsed into the mud. Gasps erupted inside the saloon. Sheriff Pike stepped forward at last, boots heavy on the wet boards. But he didn't move fast, as if the storm itself demanded patience. The outlaw's last drink hadn't been whiskey. It was rainwater, blood, and the taste of a reckoning long overdue. And as the storm howled on, the story of Eli Cade and Caleb Vance was not finished, because one of them still drew breath. The rain eased just enough for the truth to show itself. One man lay face down in the mud, blood mixing with water until the street ran red. The other staggered, chest heaving, revolver hanging loose at his side. Sheriff Pike stepped off the porch, boots sinking into the soaked earth. Every eye from the saloon windows followed him. Nobody breathed until he knelt beside the fallen figure and turned him over. A gasp rippled through the onlookers. It was Caleb Vance. The bounty hunter's eyes fluttered weakly, lips moving soundless words. A crimson stain spread across his chest, pumping slow but steady. He wasn't gone, not yet. And Eli Cade, swaying on his feet, bled from his side and shoulder but still stood. His grin was gone. In its place was a look carved from stone, pale and hollow. He looked less like a victor than a man cheated of something. "Damn you, Cade," Pike muttered, rising, but Cade only shook his head, rain dripping off his chin. "Don't lay this on me, Sheriff. He wanted the end." His voice was hoarse, almost broken. From the mud, Vance coughed, a wet, rattling sound. "Not over." His fingers clawed toward the rifle lying inches from his reach. Cade kicked it away. "Stay down, preacher. You've done your part." Pike turned, gesturing to the men inside. "Get Doc hollerin', now!" A pair of townsfolk bolted into the storm, boots splashing through puddles. Inside, murmurs rose. Some cursed Cade, others whispered awe that he still lived. Mothers pulled children back from the glass. The outlaw had survived another reckoning, but the night wasn't done. Cade holstered his revolver with a slow, trembling hand. He stooped, lifted the tin cup from where it had fallen in the mud earlier. Rain had filled it halfway. He stared at the water, then raised it to his lips. The crowd shivered as he drank, as if each swallow was another defiance hurled at the heavens. Sheriff Pike watched, jaw tight. "Why water, Cade? What's it mean?" The outlaw lowered the cup, eyes unreadable. "Because whiskey burns, but water remembers." Before Pike could press, a gunshot split the night, this one not from the duel. A bullet hissed past Cade's ear, biting into the saloon wall. Chaos erupted. 3 riders thundered down Main Street, cloaked in rain and shadows. Bandanas masked their faces, rifles flashing in the stormlight. The saloon windows exploded inward as lead tore through glass and wood. "Cade!" one of them bellowed. "You were supposed to be dead!" The outlaw cursed, diving for cover behind the trough. Pike dragged Vance by the collar toward the saloon, townsfolk screaming as shards of glass rained. Horses reared, terrified by thunder and gunfire. Cade fired back with what little strength he had left. His revolver cracked and one rider toppled from his saddle, splashing hard into the mud. The horse bolted riderless, disappearing into the storm. The other 2 wheeled, circling like wolves. Pike ducked behind a beam, returning fire with measured shots, his badge glinting faint under lightning. But his bullets found nothing but shadows. "Friends of yours?" Pike shouted over the roar. Cade grimaced, reloading with blood-slick hands. "Not friends. Wolves come to feast." The riders charged again. One hurled a torch, flames sputtering in the rain but still catching on the saloon's porch. Smoke mixed with storm as the townsfolk shrieked. Inside, men scrambled to douse the flames with buckets. Women dragged children beneath tables. The piano stood splintered, silent forever. Cade crawled from the trough, mud caked to his wounds, revolver gripped tight. He rose into the street just as a rider bore down, rifle raised. Cade's shot hit true. The man toppled backward, horse screaming as it barreled through a fence. But Cade took a bullet too, grazing his temple, blood mixing with rain down his face. He staggered, caught himself on the hitching rail, vision swimming. The last rider circled, howling curses. "Sheriff, stand aside! He's ours!" Pike fired back, missing in the storm. "Over my dead body!" The outlaw spat blood into the mud. His voice rasped, but it carried through the rain. "Over both of ours!" The final rider charged, pistol spitting fire. Cade and Pike stood shoulder to shoulder, lawman and outlaw, firing as one. Thunder answered. The rider jerked sideways, hoarse screaming, then vanished into the dark with a sickening crash. Silence followed, broken only by rain. Smoke curled from the saloon porch, hissed out by the downpour. Cade slumped against the rail, revolver falling from his hand. Pike caught his arm, holding him upright. Their eyes met. Sheriff and outlaw, enemies by law but bound now by survival. "You're bleeding out," Pike said flatly. Cade chuckled weakly, blood on his teeth. "Wouldn't be the first time." His gaze flicked to the tin cup, now lying in the mud once more. Rain filled it, drop by drop. "But I'll be damned if I don't get one more drink before I go." And as thunder rumbled low, Eli Cade bent to pick up the cup again. Inside the saloon, the townsfolk whispered, afraid to ask the question forming on every lip. Was this truly the night Eli Cade finally met his end, or would the outlaw cheat death one last time? The storm dwindled to a steady drizzle by the time the last echoes of gunfire faded from Calico Ridge. Smoke curled from broken windows, rainwater carried blood through the gutters, and the town itself seemed to hold its breath. Inside the saloon, silence pressed hard. Men stared at the floor, women clutched children to their skirts, and no one dared speak above a whisper. The piano stood in ruins, keys scattered across the floor like broken teeth. Outside, Sheriff Pike propped Eli Cade against a post. The outlaw's face was pale, his shirt soaked through with crimson, but his eyes still carried that dangerous fire. He held the tin cup, rain dripping into it, as though the heavens themselves were pouring him another round. "You're finished, Cade," Pike said quietly. "Another hour and you'll bleed out." Cade gave a crooked grin, teeth red. "Another hour's more than I expected." He lifted the cup, took a trembling swallow, and let the water slide down his throat. "See? Not whiskey, just life, in its plainest form." Pike shook his head. "You've killed men, burned towns, and now here you sit drinking water like some kind of penance." "Not penance," Cade rasped. "Remembrance. Every drink of whiskey I ever took burned away what I'd done. But water carries memory, and tonight I want to remember it all." Behind them, hoofbeats approached. The crowd inside stiffened, but it was only Doc hollering, lantern swinging, saddlebags of bandages clattering. He slid from his horse, eyes wide at the sight of Cade. "Lord Almighty," the doctor muttered. "This man needs a cot, not another gunfight." Cade laughed weakly. "You got a cot strong enough for me, Doc?" Holleran knelt, pressing rags against the outlaw's side. "Hold still, or you'll spill the rest of yourself into the dirt," Cade hissed, but didn't move. His gaze drifted to Caleb Vance, still alive, barely, carried by two townsmen into the saloon. Their eyes met across the distance, outlaw and hunter, bloodied and broken, bound by something older than law. "You should have finished me," Vance croaked. Cade coughed, shaking his head. "Wouldn't be much of a last drink if I did." The sheriff stepped between them, voice hard. "Enough. Both of you have bled this town half to death. Neither of you leaves until the circuit judge gets here." Cade smirked faintly. "You think chains will hold me, Sheriff?" "They don't need to," Pike said. "Your wounds will." Rain pattered on the tin roof, steady and relentless. Somewhere down the street, a dog barked once, then went silent. The town felt different now. Older, scarred. Cade shifted, breath ragged. "Sheriff, you ever wonder why men like me don't die quick?" Pike frowned. "Because the devil's too busy to fetch you." Cade chuckled, low and rough. "Maybe, or maybe it's 'cause the West needs its ghosts. Folks need a Cade to curse when their luck goes sour." Raised the tin cup once more. "And when I'm gone, they'll curse someone else." The outlaw drained the last of the rainwater. His hand shook as he lowered it, but his smile was steady. This is my true whiskey." The saloon doors creaked open, and every head turned. A young woman stepped inside, shawl soaked, eyes wide but unflinching. She carried a child on her hip, another clinging to her skirt. No one recognized her, yet the way she looked at Cade told of a history none in Calico Ridge knew. "Eli," she said softly. The outlaw froze, cups slipping from his grasp, clattering to the mud. For the first time that night, his eyes showed fear, not of bullets or rope, but of memory. "Sarah," he whispered. The crowd buzzed, confused. Pike's brow furrowed. "You know her?" But Cade's answer was lost in the storm's last growl. The woman stepped closer, children clutching tighter. "You left us," she said, voice breaking, "but the children deserve to see the man their father became." Gasps rippled. Pike stiffened, hand dropping to his revolver out of instinct. Doc Holleran muttered a prayer. Cade sagged against the post, his face ashen. He looked from the children to the sheriff, then back to the cup lying in the mud. His breath rattled, heavy, uncertain. His voice faltered. "I wanted to come back, but I never had the courage." The children stared at him, eyes wide, searching. The girl hid her face. The boy stared stubbornly, unblinking. Pike stepped forward, hand firm on Cade's shoulder. "Maybe this is your reckoning, Cade. Not the gun, not the gallows, but them." The outlaw's eyes welled. Not with weakness, but something deeper, something long buried. He reached out a trembling hand, but it fell short, too heavy, too late. The rain stopped. For a moment the whole town seemed to stand still. Cade closed his eyes, lips moving as though speaking a prayer no one else could hear. When he opened them again, he looked not at the sheriff, not at Vance, but at the boy and girl. A faint smile touched his bloodied lips. "Remember me?" he whispered, and then his head slumped forward, the tin cup at his feet filling again with rain. Sheriff Pike stood silent, staring at the outlaw's still form. Vance coughed inside the saloon. The woman clutched her children tighter, and the storm passed on, leaving Calico Ridge forever changed. Whether Eli Cade was truly gone, or if his ghost would ride the storm again, no one knew. But in that moment, the outlaw's last drink wasn't whiskey, it was memory.